Hello, welcome to another edition of the Pace Report. I'm Brian Pace, reporting live here at Joe's Pub here in New York City. About 3 years ago, I introduced you to a Nigerian-born singer-songwriter by the name of Ola Onabule. Now, over the last 3 or 4 years, this gentleman has taken the world by storm. In fact, he's still trying to build his American outreach here musically, and tonight he's performing music from his brand new record Pointless, which is now available on iTunes as well as Amazon.com and Apple Music. Now in this album, he's really stretching really deep into writing songs that are reflective of what's going on in the world as far as xenophobia, immigration, as well as a lot of the ills that are going around the world. Now tonight he's performing music off this brand new record, and this is his mini tour here in America, and I had a chance to sit down and break bread and catch up with him to talk about this brand new record, to talk about the progress that he's made as a musician both here and abroad, and also his concept of how he perceives music and how it's supposed to reflect art.
What kind of
The last time we did this was about 3 years ago in Harlem,
It was.
and we're back together. And this record, it's bleak in the sense that you're reflecting on a lot of things that are going on around the world.
Yes, absolutely. I came to write the album, and I had a couple of songs that I was already working on, and they were, they were so. They were kind of love songs, and they didn't reflect the conversations that I would have with my family and my friends over dinner, over a coffee, on the phone. A lot of crazy stuff was happening around the world, and I wasn't putting it in my songs, and it felt so dishonest. So I scrapped the first 3 or 4 songs that I'd written, and I started to write again. And I wrote from the heart, and I wrote as though I was having these conversations, as though I was extending these conversations in a musical form. And it just felt better. I couldn't stop writing. I ended up writing about 35 songs, and I had to get rid of so many when it came to time to putting the album together, because there's so much to say about now, and the truth, as each one of us feels it about now, needs to be put in our music. Even as a journal, as a chronicle of the times we lived in,
We were talking just a few minutes ago, and I was saying that art isn't reflecting what's going on right now. People tend to not want to think anymore, and I think the digital divide has gotten us so warped that we're not paying attention to what's really cause and effect right now. And pointless, the title is kind of poignant because a lot of stuff out here that people are following is pointless.
Exactly. Really, what do you think in the final years of your life you're going to be reflecting on, and how much of it is going to have profundity and worth if most of it is just, I liked that, I flicked on that, I swiped left on that and swiped right on that, and real life, real visceral, human stuff is passing us by whilst we're looking at our screens. It's happening. People are hurting, they're hoping, they're dreaming, they're losing, they're loving, and we're missing it. Or at least they're yearning for all those things. And we're missing it because we're staring at devices, or we're listening to tittle-tattle or gossip or fake news or whatever it is. And so I wanted to write an album that kind of just said hard, tough, real human things, flesh and blood things, not virtual, pandering. I wanted to try to do that. You never know if you're successful as an artist, but you've got to try. And so I gave it a shot.
You and Raphael Sadiq right now have been heavily played in my musical rotation right now, because Raphael's album is deep because he did a tribute to his brother who succumbed to drugs.
Yes.
And it was reflecting on how the times got to him. And this album is poignant again in the sense that you're writing about some things that are right in your face. And I'll give you an example. The Ballad of the Star-Crossed, I think, is probably the most powerful song on this record, because I look at what's happened to Trayvon Martin. I looked at of all of these senseless deaths that have gone on. But this is from a perspective from a female.
It is. It's all of these incredibly brave women, and they're not brave because they survived something as harrowing as what happened to Philando, for instance. That's not where their bravery lies. Their bravery lies in, and this probably not the sort of thing I should be saying, but I'm going to say it anyway. Their bravery lies in propagating us, in keeping us going, knowing that they're playing the odds. You know, I almost feel that there's, whether it's known or unknown, whether it's acknowledged or unacknowledged or not acknowledged, there's a bravery in choosing to have a black son. You know, anywhere in the world, not just in America. You know, and I thought I wanted to write a tribute to these women, but I didn't want to write something that was just full of platitudes. Oh, you queen, you sister, you know, go on with your bad self kind of, you know, stuff. I wanted to write a tribute that addressed that powerful moment when they have to watch a black partner or a son or a relative slip away, quite possibly in their arms. I don't know there are any other people on this planet who have to routinely, over millennia or centuries, have to endure this and accept it, you know. So it was worth writing. Ballad of the Star-Crossed. I balked at the idea. When I first started writing, I thought, ooh, is this too close to the bone? And then I thought, you've got the idea now. So now you're not going to write it, and it's just going to haunt you for the rest of your life that you didn't write something that was there for you to write. So, yeah, as I say, I don't know what's going to happen with this album. I don't know how it's going to be perceived. But I had to just kind of expunge all of these thoughts out of my brain, put them out in the world, and see.
Is the point of it all to hold you down where you fall on the fragments of the dream you saw come true that wasn't meant for you. Pointless, those shattered fingers of blue, you were never in the game. Like the echo of a lie you tell yourself, but no one's letting me. The children come and roll down degradation's drain, gouged out of hollow frames. All too soon will come to see. Pointless, that's the point of it all, to hold you there where you fall on the fragments of that dream you saw come true that wasn't meant for you. Pointless, those shattered fingers of blame, you were never in the game. Like the echo of a lie you tell yourself, but no one's letting heed. I am pointless. Red, white, and blue are ghosts, lions that once mattered most. Broken heart, too late for houses, lifeless descended flow, uneasy status quo. Far too late, we come to slow. Pointless, that's the point of it all, to hold you down where you fall on the fragments of that dream you saw that wasn't meant for you. Pointless, those shattered fingers of blue, you were never in the game. Like the echo of a lie you held, but no one's letting heed. The spirit gets empty, with reason held hostage by count of one. Fit to see, fit to love aside, and call destroy.
Ola, you being African, living in England, the UK, how has, one, the music and the art reflected what's been going on and transpiring here in the last decade.
What the music in the UK?
Yeah, and even the arts, whether it be literary and even just art in general, because back in the 50s and 60s and even in the 40s and in the 70s, we had the Black Arts Movement where everybody connected with one another.
Yes,
and I'm
that's
wondering
true.
how it is in your view over in the UK.
I think it's beginning to happen. I think this sense of a solidifying, a coalescing of thought in the diaspora is beginning to take place. It's forming. It's taking form. I hear there's a hip hop subgenre. I hope that's right to call it that, called grime in the UK, which is mainly these young third, fourth generation West African, East African, and a bit of West Indian kids, who grew up in the equivalent of the projects in the UK. And they've created this art form which is very kind of socially and politically conscious. They're very aware of how society has dealt them a bad hand, and they're willing to speak up about it. And in so doing, they're referencing what happened in the 80s with the birth of the hip-hop movement, with the late 70s and early 80s with the birth of the hip-hop movement. They're kind of referencing back. It's in the rhymes, it's in the poems they're saying, but it's mainly in the subject matter. And so when you do that, reaching across the ages and then reaching across the ocean and then reaching across the history, you start very slowly to bring people in from wherever they are and form a consolidated thought, I think. And so I think that's where it's going. The reception to this album so far has made me feel very encouraged. People are receptive. They hear the stuff. I thought I would have to do a lot of explaining. But people hear it and they go, okay, yeah, like you've just done, you mentioned Trayvon and so on and so forth. Well, we have similar things going on in Britain. There's a chap called Duggan, who lost his life in maybe sad and unacceptable conditions. But apart from that, there's a lot of disadvantage of people of a certain hue, which shouldn't happen just because of 0.3 microns thick of melanin, melanin, you know what I mean? So all of that needs to be addressed. And I'm very wary of I hear the chiming, the tolling of the bell of time. None of us are as young as we were. So if there's anything that's worth saying or worth doing, I want to say it now, because I don't know if I'm going to get a chance tomorrow.
Well, think about it. Donny Hathaway, Stevie Wonder, Nina Simone. I mean, if we even go to the hip-hop era, Chuck D, Paris. People have to communicate what's going on. And I think relative of what you did on this record, I mean, you got So They Say, or The Old Story. I mean, there's some things that you have got to say, because if you don't, what good is it for you to be an artist if you don't say these things?
And that absolutely, that is the point. What good? What's the point of being an artist? Am I just doing it for the fame? Am I doing it for the women, for the for the drugs, for the all those traditional tropes about why musicians do what they do? Well, if we go further back than the 60s and 70s, when musicians acquired that reputation, the purpose of music was to mark, powerful moments in a person's life, or funerals, births, marriages, and to be the chronicler of their time. So yeah. That's the purpose I want to re-find in being an artist. I want to say something that has worth, that is not just playful and silly and whatever. And anyway, even if I did want to do that, now is not the time. These times require us to set aside that, I think, for a minute, set it aside, spend a minute just kind of saying, hey folks, are you sure about this, and this that's happening? Or have you heard about it? Or what do you think about this? Or go home and discuss this. That's the purpose of music and art, I think. That's what it's done in more troubled times than this, and I think that's what it should do now.
You know, Ola, you're really trying to build your base here in the United States, and you're huge overseas. I mean, you go to Germany, you go into Paris. You've done, and you've done big band with. We'll go into that in just a second. How has the perception been of your music in other countries? Because here in America, you know, we have these little stereotypes, you know, and I don't want to go into them, but overseas, they appreciate the music and the art a lot better than we do here.
Oh, I wouldn't know that because, you know, I'm coming into America and I'm meeting good people like you, and I don't feel any less powerful sense of appreciation going both ways than I do anywhere else. That's the thing about music, is that for all people who open their hearts to receive, you know, someone else's art, they've already made the journey halfway. And so the experience you're having with them is universal. You know, when I go to Germany, you know, I meet like-minded people like you, who are interested, who want to communicate with the artist and receive them into their hearts and so on and so forth. So I feel very happy and at home in America because, you know, I meet lovely people who, you know, who treat me incredibly well and incredibly warmly. That's what I know of America. I haven't been exposed to this possibility yet, you know.
Just to be free of their will. There's no walls beyond the veil of this wall. And if you fade right away, you fall. That's all they'll tell of our tale.
I have noticed a drastic change in your musicianship. And the last time you were here, you played with some musicians that studied and followed your music. You hired them. But this is your band. How did this organic nature of the music and the musicians come together? And Where do you see this band and your music going in the future?
Yes, that time, that was in Minton's, I think it was. Yes, in Harlem. Yeah, you know, we were just come to do the one date. We had to get a band together. I didn't really know anybody. We pulled people together, and the music doesn't really lend itself to that. You know, people have to kind of be absorbed in African time signatures, old time signatures. They have to be absorbed in, you know, dynamics and interpreting the song. And you need to rehearse a band to inculcate that. You know, we didn't get a chance to do any of that. So without any kind of fear or favor of you know, those guys, they did the best they could in a very short space of time. But we learnt an important lesson, which is to get a band, a consistent band, of guys who we would always call every time we came to the US. We would desperately try to get them, and that's worked out so far. So it means that we're all steeped in this stuff. We're all, invested in it, and they put in the time. When I send the songs ahead, they learn the songs as best as they can. They've become my brothers, you know. John is my pianist from the UK, so he's here with us. He makes it over as often as he can, but he doesn't always. But all the other guys, you know, they're a very important part of what I do in the US now, and it makes me look forward to coming here because I know that I'm going to be safe. I'm going to be wrapped in. When the music's happening and it's all working out the way you planned it, that stage is like your living room. You know, it's like your front room.
I noticed that, and you were improvising a lot tonight. You got in the moment. You were outside of Ola. You were outside of your element. I'm like, oh man, this is some Al Jarreau meets. This is, but that's a good thing because I think, you know, this is your 9th record, and I think there's more to what people are seeing when they hear this on CD. They have to come out to support this.
Absolutely. You know, music should be enjoyed live. It's very, very difficult to capture the real energy of the inspirations, the different inspirations you feel in all the different millions of moments on the stage. You know, the guys aren't playing it like the record. If someone hits a snare extra hard, you respond to that. That's jazz, isn't it? You develop a conversation. He goes bap bap bap, and you go bap 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 bap, you know, and so on and so forth. You get into a dynamic, spontaneous moment that you can't do in a record. You know, it's difficult to. And anyway, whatever spontaneous moment you do in a record is trapped there forever, so it will never change. So yeah, I recommend that people, you know, enjoy their music live. Make sure that, you know, people, artists feel that relationship, because it's such an important part of why we make music.
It's the best we've done by far, and we've fallen in the fires of violence and calculations. It's hard. The invincible call binds us in front like a night road by one. Never swore to our cause on the eve of the path of the movements of love. shame. When you find how reinforced the fortified is a buttress, the fortress that is our love, the invincible core that binds. Like a number, like one, never swore to our cause, or believe in the power of invincible love. And I see who you are, and you're the one you're speaking of. And I know what you've done, that ain't invincible love.
Ola, who are some of your musical influences? Who are some of the guys that inspired you to sing? And who are some of the songwriters and musicians or producers that inspired you to write?
Singers, Stevie Wonder, Donny Hathaway, Al Jarreau, Frankie Beverly. Those are my kind of soul heroes. Jazz heroes, Ella Fitzgerald, Cassandra Wilson. Let me see. I love Kurt Elling, you know. So those are my kind of vocal heroes.
You nailed a man that I love. I love Jarreau, but Frankie Beverly was my Frankie B. That's my man.
Yeah, you know, he had this way of, you know, it was soulful, but you heard the lyrics, you heard what he was saying. You know, it wasn't all just party, 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 da 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 da. You know, it made you think.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah, he was an important part of my development. Curtis Mayfield, I forgot to mention Curtis Mayfield. Was yes.
He's a Gemini like myself.
Oh, is he?
Yes, he is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you know, that guy was deep, extra deep, and he was one of the first guys who kind of led me down the path of writing something that has meaning. You know, so many of his songs were so kind of trying to get people to elevate themselves a little higher. And
All of Curtis's songs, I mean, if you listen to the Claudine soundtrack, Gladys Knight and the Pips, I mean, you listen to a song like Mr. Welfare Man.
oh man,
And then he goes the opposite direction with On and On. And then
yes.
the things that he did was he said things that people had to hear.
Yeah, absolutely, and you know, once I discovered him, I think I was probably about 15 or 16. I have a feeling that the next 2 or 3 years I didn't listen to anything else. I was just so absorbed in this guy, maybe him and Marvin. You know, in the fact that these guys wanted to touch the world. They didn't just want to get, you know, that was the thing actually. I was saying this to my daughter who aspires to be a singer-songwriter as well. I said, once you cross this divide between someone who wants to absorb the spotlight and someone who sees music as almost like they're like a calling, like a mission, like I'm going to go out there and give something to people. You find a whole new thing. Then it's no longer about your ego. It's no longer about adoration. It's about touching and changing and giving and all of that kind of stuff.
You know, Mavis Staples, I heard an interview. One of their biggest hits was Let's Do It Again, which is one of my favorite Curtis Mayfield songs. Yeah.
Love that song.
Pop Staples resented, he hated that song. When they went to the studio It's a real true story. This is crazy. She said he didn't like the song because he was spiritual.
Yeah.
The Staples were very spiritual and
Oh,
folk.
yes.
And he convinced Pops to do his part, and that became one of the Staples and his biggest hits. It's weird, and it's weird because I bring that song up because Curtis was responsible for making people dance. He was responsible for making people think.
Yes.
And a lot of kids were conceived his music.
Oh man, that's the dream. If you can do that, you know, that's why I admire people like that. That's the totality. It's a whole picture of life. So yeah, he's a worthwhile hero, and I'm trying to channel the spirit of people like that. I don't want that kind of way of seeing music. I don't want it to just disappear, you know, because I remember those guys fondly, you know, and warmly, and you know, and I don't want that to go away and just go with the, you know, yeah. Curtis Mayfield's a huge hero, you know, and for songwriting, the other, you know, so many songwriters: Bob Dylan, Leonard Cohen. Marvin Gaye, Curtis Mayfield, you know, these are the guys who kind of gave me a sense that, you know, you can put Stevie Wonder, Songs in the Key of Life, you know, literally changed my life.
I really think Stevie and Marvin they were playing ping pong with each other when they were coming with their creativity in the 70s.
Yes, it was a very key moment and a keen eye that they had, because I remember I think it took Berry Gordy a minute or two, if the history books are right, to see what they were trying to say. That
He didn't want to release what's going on.
That's it. Yes, and I think it was very astute of them to hold on and to press, because if they hadn't added that to the pantheon of black music, then it would all have just been bubblegum, good times, fun time people, from people who had endured the most, you know, exacting circumstances and survived. You know, that is the story, is the most exacting and survived. And this is what, you know, these guys put in their music. So they become historical documents in a way.
They have. Because, I mean, Marvin Gaye's I Want You still stands the test of time. And I have to put a caveat: Leon Ware deserves just as much.
Yes, absolutely, yes. Very important. You know, it's not even a footnote. Absolutely, you're right.
That'll do it again for another edition of the Pace Report, reporting live here at Joe's Pub here in New York City. Make sure you go out and buy Ola's brand new CD, Pointless, which is now available on iTunes, as well as Amazon.com and Apple Music. I'd like to personally thank the staff and management here at Joe's Pub for their warm hospitality. Also, please like, share, and subscribe to my videos here on Vimeo and YouTube, and visit my website, thepacereport.com, for my weekly column as well as my past segments. Until next time, remember, if it's in the groove, it'll make you move. Till next time, peace.